days ago when I came on here and I told people, don't get your ratings information from places that are not reliable. And what did a bunch of you did? For 2 days, I've been wandering through because I've had 2 videos that have had a bunch of comments. And I'm wading through these comments. I'm reading. I do read through the comments, folks. And you people don't know what you're doing. It's amazing that you people don't know what you're doing when it comes to these ratings numbers. It boggles my mind. But anyways, we finally got the Raw rating today. It came out late. I would imagine, I'm pretty sure I know why it came out late. But anyways, I've put all of the ratings information that we have over the last few days. I've kind of consolidated it and do all of that. It is in the description box. I delete part of it because we don't need that. It's in the description box, so you guys can check it out. Dissect the numbers as you see fit. If you don't know, I'm just going to go over it now, but let me preface this by saying this. Because a lot of people have said this, and I completely agree. The ratings, while important, I don't want to say that they're not important, because they're definitely important, don't mean have a dick to do with quality. It is much more important, it was much more important, in my view, for TNA to go out there, put on a good show, keep a respectable rating, and put on a good show. As I said in my video that some of you listened to and didn't understand a word I said, apparently, I watched more of Impact than I did Raw. That means I enjoyed more of Impact than I did Raw. Yes, I went after Impact a little bit more because I watched more of it. I didn't watch all of Raw because I had Raw on the computer, I had Impact on television, and I was watching Impact. Okay, so keeping that all in mind, understanding all of that, let's get started. Yes, I enjoyed it. I'm willing to give them credit. I'm willing to give them credit and say, hey, they did a 1.5. It was great, before I say what I'm about to say. Okay, so they did a 1.5, for those of you not aware. They did hours of 1.7. That was the first hour. That, in my opinion, was the worst hour, and that was their best rated. Then they did a 1.4 once Raw came on the air, and they ended with a 1.2, which is about what they normally get anyways. So as the night went on, they continually lost viewers. So that's not necessarily a good thing. But it is a good enough rating where we will probably see what a lot of you wanted to see, and what I don't mind seeing at all either, since TNA showed that they could hold their own. Seeing Impact on Monday nights, probably sometime in the near future, and we'll probably see that. I don't know how they're going to do when they're not, putting on a show like this, because I did think the show was a little too busy, and I don't think it was I think it was a great spectacle show, it was a great one-time show, but I don't see it as being, I don't think you can do these sorts of things, over and over and over again, which is the big thing, and then get to the point where, I've heard some people gripe about the fact that they didn't go to the pay-per-view, and there's a point to that. They didn't build to the to Genesis, and I agree with that point. Except that TNA's buy rates are so horrible, does it really matter? I mean, that's that sort of thing. So you have all of that. So good for TNA, wonderful for TNA. You can look in the description box. You can see kind of the ratings. The quarter breakdowns are not for Raw. We do know that Raw did a 3.6, so it was a little less than what the Observer thought and what I even thought. If you just follow the ratings, you can kind of look and see what it should have been. It was a little less than that. Keep in mind that the Fiesta Bowl did a 15, I believe. No, not a 15, a 13. I think it did a 13. It was a 13 or 15, some pretty good number. I think it was a 13. I think they did a 13. It was a pretty good number for, 2 small schools that most people don't care about, and it was a BCS game, but it wasn't the championship game. So that's pretty surprising, I think. But you can see what each segment did, segment by segment, something Dave Meltzer does. This is directly from the Wrestling Observer newsletter that came out today. So I would imagine tomorrow, because it looks like he's going to do 2 this week. We'll get the Raw stuff, because the Raw stuff has been a little late. So there is that. So you guys can all look at that and enjoy and comment. So, but again, like I said, I did enjoy. I want to make this point. I did enjoy Impact more than Raw. However, as I said, I did think the big segments, and the big segments were Bret Hart, both Bret Hart segments, and the DX Jericho Big Show match, I did think were better, okay, than the big segments that TNA had, which were Hogan at the end, Hogan at the beginning of the second hour, Hogan at the end of the show, and the Hogan and Jarrett confrontation. I know people said, well, you're comparing something that was Jarrett and Hogan versus a wrestling match, but that wrestling match was built up, it would be considered the, probably the biggest thing on that show next to the other two. So that's why I'm comparing those two. If you want to compare wrestling matches, yes, you can compare AJ and Angle versus that tag match. AJ and Angle blows that out of the water. No question about it. I'm not denying that fact, but I'm just saying that if you're going to compare big segments, that's kind of where I'm going for that. But so that was my point with that, was that I just think that was just, it was so much better than what TNA put on, and that the ratings don't mean a lot. Let me throw that back. That the ratings, it's more important for TNA to put on a good show than it is for TNA to, in my opinion, put on a good show and have a respectable rating than put on a bad show and get a good rating. If they can put on good shows and get respectable ratings, and we saw this, those of us that remember, with the Monday Night Wars, Raw was definitely better for a very long time than Nitro before you saw any indication in the ratings. A lot of people felt it. A lot of people wondered what it was going to take for, Raw to win, because everyone felt like they were putting on the far superior show. And that's what TNA has to do. And I've always said this, and I don't think a lot of you understand it. WWE would be like a big budget action film from Hollywood. It would be like a Michael Bay film. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, because there's a lot of Michael Bay films I like. But there's a lot of them that are just, they're popcorn. They're not A quality movies. There's maybe really good, maybe really fun, maybe entertaining movies. Okay? Then you've got your little independent film. Now, if your independent film to do better, or to be seen by a lot of people as better than a Michael Bay film, as far as successful and all of those sorts of things, that little independent film can't just be better, because most people would say an independent film is already better than a Michael Bay film. It has to be leaps and bounds superior. It has to be so much better, it's ridiculous. And that's what TNA has to do. They have to be that much better than the WWE. And that is always my biggest complaint, is they don't seem to understand that they have to be not just better, they have to be a lot better than WWE. And I know that doesn't seem fair, I know that doesn't seem right, but that's the reality of the situation. So I guess I have to explain that to people. If you don't, you need to understand that. That's kind of where I'm coming from. I've always said this over and over again. With the pay-per-views, with television, they have to be superior. They have to be so good that everybody's saying, are you watching this? So there you go. So, again, don't pay too much attention to the ratings. Just be more important. Did they put on a good show? The fact that the ratings are important, and that, hey, they held their own, and that was the important thing. So we're probably going to see more of TNA on Monday night. And, of course, this next week. Now, the ratings next week, this coming week, I think is far, far more important, because this is WWE versus UFC. And I know a lot of people on my PG little rant that I did, they brought up UFC. And let me explain something, because I don't think some of you get this. UFC does far better gates, event gates. When they do a show, they bring in a lot more money than WWE does. Okay? When they do pay-per-views, the pay-per-view numbers are far better than WWE's. The problem that people don't understand is WWE has like 6 other revenue streams that are just as important to them as pay-per-view live gates and the pay-per-view buy rates. Okay? Just as important. And the WWE is probably, I would say, I believe, and I could be wrong here, but I think the company is about 10 times bigger than UFC is currently. Not that they'll always be that way, but it's about 10 times bigger than UFC currently is. People need to understand that the WWE has all these other little sources, and that for UFC, it's all, Livegate, how much people are spending when they're at the shows and to be at the shows and all of that, and then the pay-per-view numbers. That's where that is UFC's money. Okay? So, and they are without a doubt WWE's biggest competition at the moment. It's going to be extremely interesting to see how a fight night, which is what this is, which usually gets anywhere between a 1 and a, 2 to like a 2 point, a low 2, against Raw, okay, with Mike Tyson. They definitely put the bigger mainstream guy on this show as opposed to the wrestling guy that was on Raw this week with Bret Hart. Bret Hart was definitely there for to keep the wrestling fans from going to Impact. But as I said, I don't think Raw definitely did, or WWE definitely didn't see TNA as something they needed to worry about, because what did we get? We got Bret Hart, and then we got the same Raw that we almost always got, with one exception in the tag match. We had a pretty good match that we don't always kind of get that kind of match. As opposed to next week, where I think they're going to bring out, I think they're going to try to put their best foot forward and try to put on an even better show next week. So I think WWE sees that as far more the competition than Impact was, and and you can't try to put on 2 big time shows one after another. They kind of had to pick their battles. It's not to come up with an excuse for the WWE. It's just to try to seem some sort of reality to the situation, because hey, let's face it, it's UFC versus WWE. That's a big deal. So I think the ratings next week are going to be a much bigger deal. So, I've rambled on long enough. As I said, if you want to read about the ratings, you want to read about the numbers, you can look in the description box. I'm going to stick it in there. With that, I'm out. Have a good one. Later.